Is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom making Japanese players forget about the PlayStation 5 and the software that Sony has released so far? Maybe, but I think that there's more to this story because it ties into Final Fantasy 16, what's going on with that game, what Yoshi-P had to say, and so much more. And we're also going to take a look at the overall landscape of what's going on because I think Tears of the Kingdom is going to be a very big contributor to what Nintendo's going to transition to next. So I think that it's very important that we discuss that. And then also, a random game out of nowhere that reports said was terrible, but all of a sudden it's been announced. So I'm going to get into that and my opinions if you didn't catch my live stream. But before we get to any of that, guys, what's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. And of course, be on the lookout for a brand new giveaway that we're going to be having pretty soon right here on the channel. Check out the community page. Like I said, hit those notifications. Now let's go ahead and jump right in to what we're talking about here when it comes to these sales, because this is something that was a pretty big topic earlier in the year. The PlayStation 5 actually had some momentum. You started to see some bigger sales in Japan. Now remember, we're just simply talking about the Japanese gaming industry at this point. When it comes to worldwide sales, obviously the PlayStation 5 is doing incredible. The NPD, Europe, it's really hitting on all cylinders. Now they did have a little bit of a, I would say, road bump or speed bump because of the recent PlayStation showcase, but I still feel, and based on everything that we're seeing so far, the PlayStation 5 sales are still going strong. People are still buying the system for the most part in the Western territories. But there was a new report from Japan when it comes to what Yoshi-P had to say about Final Fantasy 16, and I wanted to tie it into what we're seeing with the software sales, and something that I stated before a few months ago when people were badgering me and telling me how stupid I am when it comes to the PS5 and Switch sales analysis in Japan, because PS5 started doing a bit better. People were telling me that I'm wrong and it's all this and it's all over. But yes, obviously that is completely turned around since about March or so of this year, and PS5 has went down quite a bit. But the reason why I was concerned about the potential scalping issue, which people said that I was making up, and what was going on with the hardware sales compared to what we were seeing with software, is that the software wasn't selling. So you had PlayStation 5 selling 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 units earlier in the year. So pretty good for PlayStation. Yet you look at the software sales and there was only like maybe 2 titles or so, sometimes maybe 4, but really it never got above 4 or 5 titles on PS5 in particular. Now you would see PlayStation titles like PS4, for example, and PS5, but for the most part, even with PlayStation 5 doing better, you saw it littered with Nintendo Switch titles. Now that could be a variety of factors, right? You have the all digital PlayStation 5. That is a thing. Also, the digital consumption of consumers has skyrocketed even with Nintendo as well. But the issue though is that mainly people were buying the PS5 disc-based system. Even with the latest sales numbers, which you guys are going to see, the PS5 disc-based system is still doing way better. Now, people probably still want that option, but at the same time, if you look at the history of the Japanese sales, there should be more than at least 1,000 units being sold with a newer system on the market that's finally got some stock in Japan. Because if you look at the top 30, which was recently released, it's all Nintendo Switch titles with the exception of one PlayStation 4 title on here. That's it. One PS4 title out of 30 titles. So that is absolutely concerning, at least for me, from the outside looking in. If you're Sony and you're looking, okay, what are we going to do in terms of our plan in Japan? Hogwarts Legacy, a game that came out on the PlayStation 4 back in May, sold about 2,000 units. So I mean, not the greatest, but definitely, better than anything else. If you look at the bottom when it comes to these sales numbers, that means no PS5 title registered more than 1,233 units in physical retail in Japan. Now, like I stated, yes, there could be a larger consumption probably is of digital games, but this is definitely not good to see when you have a system that's finally there in stock, and you would expect people going out there buying a disc-based PS5 to grab some games right there in store because it's fully in stock. There's God of War, there's Horizon, there's all sorts of different games. There's Japanese titles as well available. Now, yes, there's not heavy hitters like you see a lot of Nintendo Switch first-party titles on here, and I understand that. That's something that I completely understand, but it seems like the anticipation before Tears of the Kingdom, because that's really when it started around March, so it wasn't like Tears of the Kingdom was already out, but I think that that anticipation combined with with what they talked about, and also the Legend of Zelda OLED, that just really kind of put a damper on maybe some of that momentum that the PlayStation 5 was building in Japan. And also I think that people that wanted one pretty much got one after there was shortages, and it's kind of leveled out to about where the expectations are for a company that really isn't focused on the Japanese market. Now, how does this all tie into what we're talking about with the PlayStation 5 and going forward with Final Fantasy 16? Well, there was an interview recently with Yoshi-P, and he talked about their sales projections, because Final Fantasy is always known as a bigger selling franchise. This is a up to 10 million plus selling franchise. Final Fantasy 15 hit that. Numerous Final Fantasy games before on the PS2 and the PS1 got around that or surpassed that. So what are the expectations for this game that's not launching on a massive install base like Final Fantasy games are used to having that big install base, or they grow with the install base? So let's see what Yoshi-P had to say about this. This might be a weird question to ask, but since you have put so much passion and effort into creating this game, when it comes to management, how do you think about the sales aspect here? So when it comes to product, when I first submit my proposal, it's given that I would attach together with the budget documentation. Like, this will be a platform where the game will be released. Development wise, it'll take a grand total of this amount when the game will be released. The cost for marketing and PR will take this much, and the projected profit will be around this much. These will of course be included in the documentation, but I can tell you that I wouldn't want to look at the first week's sales for Final Fantasy 16, and then he laughs on that. Now, there's a bit more when it comes to what he talks about overall with the scope and scale of the project, but essentially what he's kind of alluding to or saying here, and also my friend, the Night Sky Prince, he also talked about this as well, is that they're not expecting some type of massive week one sales for Final Fantasy 16, especially if you compare it to Final Fantasy 15. Final Fantasy 15 launched on an install base of what, 60 million PS4s at the time that it launched, another 30, 40 million Xboxes, PC when that came out as well, right, later down the line. So it's one of those things that they're analyzing the market right now. They're seeing where PS5 games are selling, especially when it comes to Japan. They're seeing the install base, and they're looking at their pre-orders. Those are all things that are being factored in and considered at this point. They're looking at all of those things, and they're saying, okay, this is kind of where things are going to go. Now, I did want to get into what Mr. Night Sky had to say on this, because I think he had a very good take on it. Make sure you guys check out his channel. He's a fantastic Final Fantasy content creator, so make sure you guys go subscribe to him. But essentially, he had this to say on Twitter. Yoshi-P confirms his strategy exactly as I predicted. The game is not going to do huge numbers day one. Final Fantasy VII Remake sold into an install base of 110 million PS4s. Final Fantasy 15 into an install base of 60 million PS4s plus 40 million Xbox Ones for 100 million total. And there's only 38 million PS5s. FF16 is bottlenecked hard. So essentially, this is something that I also talked about as well. Like, well, don't expect anything super crazy. That's why the pre-order numbers in terms of the COMG were lower and everything, because we're looking at the PS5 sales. We're looking at what's selling and what's not and what's going on. And with only about 40 million systems on the market and not everybody into a fantasy RPG game, it's going to be tough to hit super high numbers like Final Fantasy 15 did, because that's where people are going to compare it. It's called Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 16. If you look at Final Fantasy 14, the online game, obviously that has huge numbers. The most popular, best-selling Final Fantasy game of all time is that online game. So if you start comparing it to that, there's going to be some trouble. So I think that there's some preemptive, okay, let's manage expectations for this game based on the current landscape. However, I think that they can grow with the install base. Now, there is a strategy for this when it comes down to it, and that's the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 with Final Fantasy X, it grew with the install base as it was also an early game on the system. I think the biggest difference, though, is that Final Fantasy X had the support of the Japanese base when it comes to the system sales. There was no Switch. Nintendo, when it comes to the GameCube and obviously the Xbox, was not a question there. Now here you have the Nintendo Switch, you have smartphone gaming, there was a lot of RPGs across the board everywhere, so it creates a little bit of a harder path for it to grow the way that some of these other games that grew with the systems did when it comes to Final Fantasy. Now, I still think that the game is going to do well over the long run as more and more people pick up a PlayStation PlayStation 5, but it will be a little bit tough at the beginning. I still feel that here in the Western territories, I think that Final Fantasy 16 has a phenomenal chance to do incredible. But I do think because of Tears of the Kingdom, because of the Nintendo Switch, because of the sheer amount of people that just have the system, and that is kind of the focus of a lot of people in Japan, it is going to be tougher for the game to sell than it would have been before Nintendo had something like that, or before they had some of these bigger RPGs or bigger games that are releasing. And one more thing that I wanted to get into is a game that I covered on my live stream recently that some of you guys probably missed. I think most of you guys probably watching probably missed that live stream, and that is Everybody 1-2 Switch. Now what this is a sequel to 1-2 Switch on the Nintendo Switch. This was a launch title for the Nintendo Switch system that's currently sitting at a 58 on Metacritic. It's not gotten good reviews. People did not like this game. There was some games in there that people felt was pretty good, like that quick draw game and everything. That was kind of fun. But for the most part, this game was not looked at as a highly rated or really good game. But the game sold really well. It sold nearly 4 million copies of the last time that we know about the sales numbers. It might be even over that. And it's one of those games that obviously made a lot of money. So the report on this game, because Nintendo did announce it for June 30th, it's just sneaking out there in June. Nintendo did just announce this game, but the report on this game was the fact that this game was so bad, apparently, that the playtesters were having problems. And the report that had this game, they stated that it was called Everybody's with an apostrophe S, 1-2 Switch, so they nailed the game. So since they nailed the name of the game, I think that the report, the Fanbyte report, was definitely accurate with some of the problems that this game had, that playtesters were having issues, the games weren't fun, it was tedious, they were just having problems. And even the stuff like with the cell phone, the Jackbox Party type of stuff, all of that was correct, because we can see in the actual photo for the game in the box art that there's people using smartphones and a lot of people playing the game. So essentially, this game is coming out, and Nintendo didn't even release a trailer for it. I can't even remember the last time a Nintendo announced a game and there was no trailer. All they said was, hey, here's this game, Everybody 1-2 Switch. It's coming out June 30th. It's $30, so it's $20 less than the original game on the Nintendo Switch, which was $50 at launch, which is, I think, still $50 when it comes to what Nintendo charges for it. So it's $30, so $20 less, and they just dropped it out there with no trailer at all and saying, hey, it's coming out June 30th, the same month. That is wild. So could this game still have all of those issues that the Fanbyte report reported on? I mean, absolutely, especially if we didn't even get a trailer or anything like that. However, we still kind of need to wait and see exactly how it's going to be. It was a 58 on Metacritic for a 1-2 Switch. Could this game jump up to a 65 to 70? I guess it's possible, but we'll see if they incorporate a lot of the stuff that apparently it was based off of, which is the Jackbox Party games and all of that, and some of the other games that you can play with your cell phones and like party games, things like that, right? So it's going to be very interesting. I'm just looking forward to seeing it because people were kind of going crazy a little bit. At first, some people were even reporting that there was sellouts of the game. Now, when I heard that there was sellouts, because I think that War64 reported that, I was like, okay, well, let me try to go buy the game. And I went and bought the game, no problem at all. So it wasn't there was sellouts or anything. There was just some glitches on the My Nintendo website. But yeah, interesting nonetheless. So I guess I'll report back to you guys on how this game actually is. But I don't have super high hopes because we didn't get a trailer and Nintendo didn't explain it too much. This was the description of the game via Nintendo.com. Want a party? Break out the Nintendo Switch system and laugh it up at your next game night. Mix up your next get-together with Everybody 1-2 Switch game. Grab some Joy-Con controllers or smart devices for team-based games that are easy to set up and feature everything from balloons to aliens and more. People at your next party can get moving and show off their teamwork in this multiplayer mashup. A mix of games and modes to keep you on your toes. Use the Joy-Con controllers or smart devices, team up, and let the games begin. Split into teams and see which group can win a certain number of games first. Many games have several variations that change up the rules or add extra challenge. And Nintendo also released some new Joy-Con colors as well, like light pastel style Joy-Con, so that's pretty cool. So it seems like this game might be not so good because once again, no trailer, not much of a description, didn't really describe the games and stuff like that. So they've been sitting on this game for a while. That report came out summer of last year. That report came out. So did they make improvements? Did they change anything? Once again, we don't know at this point. We're just going to have to wait and see. The fact that they just kind of threw it out there in between Zelda and Pikmin with no trailer, not a good first impression at least. So what are your thoughts on everything when it comes to Zelda, Final Fantasy 16, and this random game that just kind of came out of nowhere? Let me know in the comment section below, and make sure you check out our other videos right here on the screen. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you for the next video. Peace.